Hi everyone. I just wanted to do a short update to talk more about June and looking down the timeline. I am going to, as always, do a more detailed update for the second half of June when we have a very important full moon in Capricorn. But I just wanted to cover a bit of ground that I didn't cover in the new moon in Gemini update that I'd like to share with you in case it's going to be helpful for you. Now, I mentioned that on the 1st of June, Jupiter is going to conjunct Sedna, dwarf planet Sedna, which has an 11,400-year orbit. They're both right at the beginning of Gemini. And really, it's over this weekend, 1st, 2nd of June, that we could feel that. And just observe, it's just going to hit one time. Often conjunctions we have three times as the planet moves direct and then retrograde and then direct again. This time, it's only a single conjunction. And so just be aware of anything that comes into the news, into collective consciousness around the themes of Jupiter expanding Sedna. So this is around AI, new technology, innovation, neural networks. It could be around education, changes in education. It could be around new species that are being discovered. I think we'll discover a lot of new species from the sea that will offer us new medicines as well. And as well as possibly new seafood, but also I think indications of how we are changing as humans, because I do believe, as you know, we're not just transforming, we're going through a kind of metamorphosis in a way that we've never done before. So it's only, for these couple of days at the beginning of June. However, this may give us a glimpse of what's going to start to happen next year when Uranus moves into Gemini. It's going to be in Gemini from July to November next year, and then fully from 2026. And that really will be a very exciting period because Uranus will be conjunct Sedna for a period of at least a year and a half, really. And that, I think, will explode technology, all kinds of innovations, our understanding of the cosmos, our understanding of how reality is formed, how our thoughts create our reality, that kind of interaction, but also galactic connection, galactic news, galactic connection, I think will be happening in a much bigger way. And so that's going to be an incredibly fast-moving period. I mean, it's going to be fast-moving from now on because, as you know, the outer planets from now till 2026 are all moving from Earth and water, slow, heavy, into fire and air, and principally at the moment, air. So just observe, as I say, on Sunday the 2nd, Jupiter is also trying to Pluto, and then on the 4th, Mercury comes to conjunct Jupiter as well. So this is big future thinking, big horizons, and dreaming big about the future in a way perhaps that you haven't done quite as fully before. So this is positive and very expansive. So, and then on the 9th, we have Mars moving into Taurus for 6 weeks until the 21st of July. Now, with so many planets in Gemini, we have the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter for the following year, next 12 months. That's a lot of air, plus Pluto in Aquarius. And so Mars in Taurus will be stabilizing to some extent. If you have Mars in Taurus in your birth chart, or you know anyone with Mars in Taurus, there's a great reliability and stability with that signature. People who have that, they have great persistence, endurance, tenacity, seeing things through to the end. Their energy can just keep going and going and going in a very steady, measured way to get to the end of the project or whatever is required. So that will really help with all this more potentially scattered Gemini energy. And just to stay on the theme of Mars, on the 11th, Mars moves to square Pluto, 2 degrees of Taurus Aquarius. Now, This is fantastic personally. It gives enormous willpower and kind of laser focus on something. Whenever you have Mars Pluto aspects, you may have that in your birth chart, gives terrific willpower, terrific focus, which is so useful. But in the bigger world, on the global stage, it can bring very powerful assertions of power, strong assertions of power. Might makes right. Looking back to October, 7th of October last year, when we had the Hamas attacks on Israeli settlements, we also had a Mars square Pluto. Those were in the late degrees of the cardinal signs, Libra, Capricorn then, but nevertheless, it was Mars square Pluto. So stay in peace at this time, remain focused on your projects, use it positively, but stay in peace. Don't ignite that already hot, polarized situation. So, yes, a lot, there's so much happening from now on because everything is moving astrologically so quickly. And in respect to that, Jupiter is moving very fast. Jupiter takes a year, 12 months to move through a sign. It has just literally entered Gemini on the 25th of May, but by October, it will have moved to 21 of Gemini. Now, considering it normally takes 12 months to move 30 degrees, that's fast. That's really quick. And then it moves retrograde and twos and fro's until June next year. But see where 0 to 21 degrees of Gemini falls in your chart, which house area. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from my website. Go to the link below, you get a 2-part video series that will take you from really 0 to understanding these points in your chart and where they fall for you, what it means for you. But when Jupiter, and I do have a teaching video actually of Jupiter and Saturn transits through the houses that will help you as well. That's very inexpensive. But broadly, when Jupiter is moving through a house, it expands the meaning of that house, the qualities of that house. So, if you have normally it is very beneficial, very helpful, because it can suggest success or abundance or recognition in some way, or if it's in the 10th house or the 6th house, it's being appreciated for the quality of your work, what you do. Occasionally, it can expand a problem if there is already a problem in that house area. Say you have a health issue and Jupiter's moving through that, it can temporarily expand the problem to make sure you give it enough attention. But generally, it brings in positivity and it kind of releases the flow. It can bring a kind of freedom and liberation to whatever has been stuck as well. So that's going to be, that area of Gemini, 0 to 21, is going to be very activated, expanded, and normally for the good. So see where that's moving. Equally, Uranus is moving quickly. Uranus has an 84-year cycle, but it is never going to come back to the 21 degrees it was at with that important conjunction with Jupiter on the 20th of April. It's going to keep on trucking forwards until later this year. So by September, it's going to have moved to 27 degrees of Taurus. And it really won't be at those kind of 21, 22, 23 degrees of Taurus for another cycle, another 84 years. So be very alert to what it is now activating in your chart. And again, look at where those last 10 degrees of Taurus fall in your chart, which house area, because Uranus can either bring sudden radical change from the outside, because it's all about breaking up routines and stale patterns. Much more comfortably, it works if you initiate the change. If you bring in some kind of variety or newness or breaking of old patterns or going your own way, being more of a maverick, expressing your creativity, your unique essence in a bigger way, then it's a much more comfortable transit. So both Jupiter and Uranus, considering its orbit, are both moving ahead strongly now until September, October time. I just want to mention as well that by late June, early July, Jupiter will come to conjunct Uranus in the US chart. The US chart that I use and most astrologers use is 4th of July, 1776, Philadelphia, 10 past 5 in the afternoon, the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And Uranus in that chart is at 8 degrees of Gemini. Very importantly, in the US chart, it rules the third house of the media. Essentially, it's the media, mass media. So with transiting Jupiter coming to conjunct US Uranus, ruling the third house of the media, we could, and particularly because this is around about the time of the full moon in Capricorn, which has some very strong similar themes, I think we could see some big, surprising, big, shocking truth coming to light, because both Jupiter is to do with the truth, the law, and justice. Uranus is very much to do with truth, piercing sword of clarity, shocks, surprises, shattering of old paradigms, very much shattering of old belief systems. I think we could see some very interesting and strong news coming to the fore. It's going to come in waves, actually, all of this year, all of next, and ongoing, but particularly late June, early July. And it may be particularly relevant to the US because we're looking at the US chart there. So very interesting. The planet that is not moving quickly is Saturn. Saturn is moving very, very slowly right now. It's currently at 19 degrees of Pisces, and it's all of this month it's at 19 degrees of Pisces, and it will backtrack to 12 degrees of Pisces retrograde by October and November this year, but it won't move forwards again, it won't move direct to 19 degrees of Pisces until the second half of February next year. So it's spanning a very narrow area in Pisces, a kind of 19 degrees back to 12. So again, see, there's going to be a very different house area for you. See where those degrees of Pisces are falling in your chart, because Saturn brings in a very different message for you, which is where we need to apply focus, discipline, and work. Now, Saturn can be really excellent for narrowing our focus. So, for instance, if it's moving through the third house, that can be a terrific time to study something because it narrows the mind down to specific objectives, specific information. This may be about strengthening your spiritual practice, because being more disciplined with that, because it's in Pisces. If it's in the fourth, if it's moving through your fourth house, it could be about some physical work that's needed on the house in some way, some repair work. It could be some plumbing. If it's in Pisces, that's exactly what I've got at the moment. Saturn is in Pisces, moving through my fourth house, and the washing machine has just flooded the floor. So it's almost laughable, so literal. So see where that is moving, because it's very much about work, repair, effort, and focus that are needed at this time. But it could well be about a more disciplined spiritual practice, which is so positive. So they're all moving through very different areas. But I really want to highlight how much air we have right now. We have the personal planets. We have, at the moment, the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter. Jupiter for the next year, moving through Gemini. We also have Sedna until 2067, moving through Gemini. It only entered Gemini on the 27th of April. We have Pluto in Aquarius essentially until 2044. as a short dart back to Capricorn, 2nd of September to 19th of November, but essentially then it's staying in Aquarius for another 20 years. That's a lot of air. And so we are going to see huge intellectual developments. As I say, I think AI is going to be enormous. The linking of our neural networks, how we learn, how we educate ourselves. I think the educational system is going to be changed out of all recognition. Just digitization, how our neural networks affect our realities, I say, digital identity, digital currencies, everything becoming electrified and digitized. I was writing about this, 12 years ago. A lot more about facial recognition, a lot more about social media development as well. Huge amounts of information coming in at us, and we have to learn to discern and sift. New discoveries about space and how our cosmos is formed. I think that's going to be enormous, and we really are going to nail how it's all about frequency and energy, which so many of us already know, but we are really going to get and understand that in a bigger way than ever, about frequency and energy. But the air can take us into our heads because it's intellectual energy. It can be up here. And so it really is very, very important to ground. Simple stuff. Hug a tree, bare feet on the grass, do breath work, really drop into the body. Physical exercise is another way to do it. Drop into the body, drop into the breath as often as you can, because there's going to be not only so much information, but so much focus on the out there. Yes, we are going to have more extreme weather moving forwards. We're going to have tornadoes, hurricanes, very strong winds. I think a lot of learning about geomagnetics, unstable, I've got a whole video on that, unstable geomagnetics, electromagnetics, how our whole earth and being is all about that, and how we interrelate, essentially, I think, via our hearts, because our hearts are our largest electromagnetic organ. And as Lee Harris via the Z's says, they say that's our portal to the cosmos. And so, but isn't it interesting that I think almost for the first time in my lifetime, we've started to talk about space weather. Previously, we just talked about weather. Now it's about space weather since Pluto's moved into Aquarius. It's all about the out there. And that's partly, of course, because we're at the peak of solar cycle 25. The peak seems to be happening now this year with heightened sun's activity. You're all very aware of the solar flare activity at the moment, and how that is affecting our Earth with increased seismic activity, destabilizing the ionosphere. Everything is connected, but big part of our evolution at the same time. So we could see more power outages, we could see more internet outages. So sort of don't worry if these things happen, because it's the result of this very strong solar flare activity, and they are ingredients for our rapid evolution. So just know that. So welcome them in rather than resist them. We are likely, because Neptune is at 29 degrees of Pisces, the very last degree of the zodiac, to also see more flooding. I'm doing a whole separate video with my good friend Heather Ensworth about Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces. So I'll leave that until we do that in a couple of weeks' time. But when Pluto moves through a sign, and I've mentioned this in previous videos, it has a very complex process of it intensifies the nature, the symbolism of that sign, but also reveals what is not for our highest good. So, for instance, it moved into Capricorn in 2008, and within a few months, September 2008, we're all aware we had the financial crisis, because Capricorn is to do with big business and big banking and big government. And in the period that it's been in Capricorn, it has intensified and strengthened those top-down structures, big big government, big corporations, big institutions, that verticality, those organizations that have power over us. But now it's moved into Aquarius for the second time and fully as of 19th of November for 20 years, as I say. So it will, on the one hand, intensify science and technology, but on the other hand, also create, as it did in Capricorn, a crisis around those areas. So will we see a crisis around science? And, we were very much encouraged to trust the science. Will there be a crisis around that? Will there be a crisis around the invasiveness of technology? I think there will, big time. But also aviation. Remember that Uranus is the sky god and Uranus rules Aquarius. I don't know if you've been following the woes of Boeing recently. I've lost count. I've absolutely lost count of the numbers of extreme incidents with Boeing in the last, really through this year. It was really starting the beginning of the year. It was interesting because Pluto's second time moved into Aquarius, the sign linked to aviation. Lost wheels, engine failures, sudden altitude drops. On the 21st of May, there was massive turbulence on a plane, and I think flying from London to Singapore. One person died. There were several severe injuries. I mean, it was just turbulence, as we've never experienced. There have been hydraulic leaks. There have been fuselage blowouts, door plugs flying off in midair, and doors coming loose. I mean, unbelievable amounts of accidents. I mean, really quite serious accidents. In fact, back in March, the Federal Aviation Authority, the FAA in America, grounded 50 Boeing planes because they weren't safe. And therefore that caused plane shortages, disruption in aviation yet again. And apparently Boeing has lost 29% so far in its stock price. It's one of the poorest performing stocks at the moment. But we are at the same time going to see a revolution in travel and air travel. For instance, I posted recently about a single person electrical vehicle that's been developed now, flying vehicle. It can just take one person plus a small piece of luggage. So clearly you have to learn on a simulator. There's no room to squeeze in the trainer with you. But it is, I believe that's already operational. So that's a flying single person car. I think there are going to be huge jumps in air travel beyond anything we've known before. So ultimately, I think we'll be able to just focus and think ourselves to a location in space, and we will get there, or on Earth, and we will get there. But there are going to be interim stages to that, where we go back to extremely fast supersonic travel and even forms of teleportation. I think it's going to be absolutely revolutionized in the time that Pluto is in Aquarius. And these crises around aviation will force that, will force big jumps in how we travel, particularly air travel, but even kind of local day-to-day travel, which is much more Gemini around our neighborhoods, that will change too. Particularly after Uranus starts to move into Gemini next July, we will see a lot more far-flung galactic travel, as I say, in galactic connection too. And, from really 2026, I think even next year, but from 2026 through to 2028, we've got 5 beautiful trines between Uranus and Pluto. And we also have Neptune at the midpoint of that, and that's going to really last for pretty much a couple of years. And when we look back in history, when Uranus was trying to Pluto, it's an incredible time of creative blossoming. I think it will also be a time of technological innovation, but it will have a spiritual underpinning because of the Neptune midpoint as well. But talk much more about that as we get closer to that. Both Gemini and Aquarius are very linked to not only our intellect, but our nervous system. Both very much connected to our nervous system. So it's very possible with all of this overload, all of this input we're going to have, a lot of it will be incredibly exciting, incredibly interesting, new ideas, innovations, etc. It's going to be, truths coming to light, Aquarius, Uranus. It's going to be very fast paced, but we must use our discernment and not get mentally too jazzed up, because there's great potential for mental overload and really jangling and jazzing up our nervous system. So I was saying to a good friend just the other day, I book stillness meetings with myself, just as I would have in the past booked a business meeting that I wouldn't possibly miss. I wouldn't dream of not turning up to a business meeting. Equally, I now book stillness meetings with myself several times a day, even just for 5 minutes, and I will drop into stillness. And I will say, as part of my rolling mantras, I love stillness. I love stillness. Also, part of my other rolling mantras, as you know, I live in love, joy, bliss, freedom, and safety. I've added those in, freedom and safety, and keep rolling those around your head like rosary beads. There's a part of my rolling mantras, particularly when I'm on my morning walks, but I will book stillness with myself. And I will either, weather permitting in England, have bare feet on the grass, but also breath work, dropping into deep breath work. There are lots of forms of breath work: Wim Hof, yogic breath work, pranic breath work. I do something called Soma breath, or one word, SOMA breath, which is a combination of Wim Hof and Buteyko and yogic breath work. I do that every day, even if it's just for 20 minutes, but it takes you into your body and out of the head. And you get used to this default point being your center in here rather than out there. Whether we're defaulting to the news and the bad news, or whether we're defaulting to exciting information, it doesn't matter. We're still defaulting our energy and our power out there. So get into the habit through your day of coming back to your center, and imagine that you're breathing in and out through your heart. Just imagine. And people say, well, how do I do that? Well, just imagine it. Just imagine that you're breathing in and out through the heart, and live from the heart. As I so often say, live from the inside out rather than the outside in. And you get into the feeling of that. This is your anchor. This is your center. This is your radio dial, how you set your days. And rather than, we talk a lot about higher frequency and higher consciousness, and rather than thinking of going up, because there's so much about air in the next few decades, think of expansion. Think of expanding your heart energy. I heard something beautiful from, again, a channeling by Lee Harris of the Z's. They talked about the heart not only as a portal to the cosmos, but they talked about it not as a kind of pink, fluffy, romantic thing, but as the brain of the soul. Isn't that amazing? The brain of the soul. I think we are going to discover so much about the heart because of its powerful electromagnetic toroidal field and how it links with the cosmos. There's so much we're going to find out about the heart, about water, about light, and how all of these things connect. And as you know, I'm on down a few rabbit holes on that. But try and think of expansions, expanding the heart energy, expanding your consciousness, and if you can think of nothing better, particularly on our Sunday evening meditations, think of we're welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. We're welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. So think of that feeling of spaciousness. And when you get particularly any difficult news coming into you, people send me stuff all day long. And you equally are exposed to things all day long. And when you get that kind of reaction or that drop in frequency, oh, it's not good news. Be mindful. Take a breath. Just take a breath. Say, is that even true? How do I know that's even true? Take a breath, step back, be on your eagle's perch, maybe take your stillness break or a breathwork break at that point, and come back and say, no, I create my reality from the inside out. We're welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. The more of us that are doing this, the more of us we are changing our future, which is currently invisible. Tomorrow is invisible, as I so often say. It's down to us, and we are radically, as humanity, coming together in love and changing our future trajectory. So I just wanted to add that in to put a little more information around the last update I did. But as I say, I'll be back next week with the next update. And the conversation with Heather Ensworth probably the following week about Neptune at the very last degree of the zodiac. So God bless. Hope that's helped you. Bye for now. Have a wonderful week.